Very little or indeed no attention. Tens of thousands of people from that area live in appalling conditions inside the territory. Anywhere up to 150,000 have fled to refugee camps in Algeria. In Western Sahara, there are reports of killings and torture by the Moroccan security forces who occupy the territory. And now people there fear that their valuable natural resources are about to be plundered by outsiders. Yet the outside world, including the EU, seems powerless or is unwilling to do what's necessary to resolve this issue. Why so? Una Smith reports.
The story of the people of Western Sahara remains largely untold. Known as the Sahrawis, they are a people divided, some living to the south of Morocco under that country's control, and others displaced in neighbouring Algeria. They became divided when Morocco invaded in 1975 as the Spanish colonial power withdrew. The right of the Sahrawi to a homeland remains unresolved.
Well, to live in occupied Western Sahara, it's like to live in a big jail.
There is a huge legal issue involved, and that is that in any event, it is a disputed territory, even by the most minimalist version of international law.
Western Sahara is in North Africa, just south of Morocco, with a 2,000-kilometre coastline on the Atlantic. The people of Western Sahara now fight not just for their right to self-determination, but to resist Moroccan exploitation of their hugely valuable natural resources. Ireland, as well as many other EU states, have cashed in and have played their part in the plunder.
In 1975, it was few companies, above all Spanish companies concerning fisheries and so on. But unfortunately now, you can see a lot of companies from different parts of the world.
History tells a long story of dispossession and bloody invasion. In 1975, Morocco used cluster bombs and napalm in their war with the Polisario, representing the Sahrawi. It forced the majority of the population to flee.
قولوا عني كيفاش لي نشعر أنا الشير انطلقت ماني كبير والراعي في المرتاح ذا والجرحى لي نشعر بها لعني أي وقت نقد حتى أنا نموت والله أي وقت نقد نجرح يعني نوع من الرعب شم الناس متدردغ مع الرقوقوتو في خطونا بالم يقصفوا الطيار من كل بليده الأرض الطنوكة يدقدقوا السماء يصب من الطيار يعني هذا نوع اللي ما قد حد يتحمل واش قال حد مازال صغير ولا مازال يعني ما فات عنده ذاك من يعني القدرات اللي يعود عنه ما يخاف ولا كذا يعني نوع من الرعب اللي ما قد حد يتحمله.
Delilah was among 165,000 Sahrawi who fled to southern Algeria. They have lived there ever since in refugee camps in a desert wasteland, relying on humanitarian aid for over 4 decades.
Claro, entonces hay carencias y teniendo en cuenta entonces de que somos un pueblo refugiado, que estamos viviendo en una zona que antiguamente no era muy, que no creía que podría entonces sobrevivir una persona con altas temperaturas y con la escasez de agua.
ثرواتنا خاصة الفوسفات والسمك ظروفنا الاقتصادية حقيقة ظروفنا الاجتماعية من أصعب ما يكون حقيقة صعب احنا في ظروف صعبة يعني مواطنين يعانوا من نقص في الغذاء يعانوا من نقص في الدواء يعانوا من نقص في السكن.
To stop the Sahrawi people returning, the Moroccan government built a massive barrier wall closing off the territory. It meant the Sahrawis were torn apart, living on either side of the wall, 2,500 kilometres long, is second only to the Great Wall of China in length.
We call it the wall of shame. Why? Because it's divided the entire population of Western Sahara. It's divided families, like happens, for instance, with me. I'm in this side, and my family is living in the other side. And just an example, but it's happened with thousands of families in Western Sahara since 1975.
You lead a life in which you're struggling every day, every moment with everybody. You're struggling to study, you're struggling to just to walk freely in the street. You need to struggle because you will easily clash with the Moroccan authorities, police.
The international community has condemned Moroccan action. The UN General Assembly passed a resolution stating that it deeply deplores the aggravation of the situation resulting from the continued occupation of Western Sahara by Morocco, and urges Morocco to join in the peace process and to terminate the occupation of the territory of Western Sahara. Michael D. Higgins monitors the Sahrawi struggle. He says that despite UN resolutions, none of the major powers recognise their rights.
It seems to me that very often the great powers' involvement in the area has been one of making, as it were, the occupation permanent rather than seeking a resolution.
Human rights abuses of the 80,000 Sahrawi living in the occupied zone are well documented. Recent reports from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch highlight the torture, rape and unlawful detention of the local people. Years of subjugation and the failure of peace talks with Morocco led to a massive protest by locals near the capital of Western Sahara, El Laayoune, last year. It drew the support of a quarter of the population, but was brutally suppressed by the Moroccan military. Protests are also sparked by the plundering of the country's natural resources, oil, gas, phosphates and fisheries. It has been going on for years.
في الدواء يعانوا من نقص في السكن، يعانوا من نقص في التعليم، يعانوا من نقص في كل شيء، في كل شيء. حتى الأرض اللي عايشين فيها أرض يعني صعبة، يعني ما فيها غابات، ما فيها نباتات، ما فيها فلاحة، ما فيها مياه، ما فيها كذا.
There is a very clear legal position in international law as to the circumstances in which development can take place in contested, disputed or occupied areas, and I feel that this was ignored.
One of Western Sahara's key resources is its rich fishing waters. They have been heavily fished in recent years by mainly Spanish and French fishermen, with some Irish, under a controversial agreement drawn up between the EU and Morocco.
I'm very convinced myself that the original decision of the European Union, in fact, people have privately admitted this to me, that the original fishing concessions are without any kind of secure legal basis within the European Union itself.
Concessions were made to allow fishing if the local Sahrawi people were compensated, as is required under international law. The EU Fisheries Commissioner acknowledges that she is unsure if this is happening.
I have discussed this issue and I have realized that there is a widespread disagreement about the real benefits of this agreement, fisheries agreement, for the people of Western Sahara.
Despite this, Ireland recently voted to renew the fisheries agreement on the basis of information provided by the Moroccan authorities. Other governments, including the UK, Denmark and the Netherlands, found it insufficient.
To be honest, I'm not satisfied with that level of information, and that is why I am only offering conditional support until next February for the extension of the agreement on the basis of making a very strong declaration with Germany and Slovenia, which puts pressure on the Commission to actually gather their own information within Western Sahara on whether or not there is sufficient benefit for Western Sahrawi people.
Just go to the occupied territory and you can see the truth, because absolutely no Sahrawi people are benefiting from this kind of agreements. There is lack of jobs, there is a lack of absolutely everything. You can say that this kind of agreement benefits the people from Western Sahara, because the report they have received from the EU, the report has received the EU from Morocco. It was made by the government, the Moroccan government, so absolutely it's a big lie.
Other hugely valuable resources in Western Sahara are oil and gas, in which there is international investment. In recent times, big oil names like Kerr-McGee and Total have left under pressure from lobby groups. By contrast, San Leone, an Irish company with headquarters in City West, has just begun a major new project there.
And we knew that it was a dispute, and we knew that there were problems in the area. We take our international obligations seriously.
Made a big contract at about 4 million acres. They said that only they are starting in the south of Morocco, but that includes half of Western Sahara, because we are talking about 4 million acres. They're doing their prospection for oil.
In order to be legal, any extraction of natural resources in Western Sahara must benefit local people, but they don't see any. They've been protesting against San Leon, and some people recently went on hunger strike to highlight the injustice.
I am not aware of that. Any time that we receive information like that, we do genuinely pass it on to Moroccans.
Do you have any line of communication to the Sahrawi people?
We don't.
To pull it?
No, we don't.
Why not?
We don't. But because they're not, from our point of view, and certainly from the point of view of the organization and the government that issues our license, they're not a representative people.
Why not consult with them directly and say, are you benefiting?
I don't think they would actually speak to us, to be honest. That's just kind of the way that these things go
Why
in this
not?
dispute. People very much take sides, I'm afraid.
From what I can tell from
Right.
you is you're making billions, possibly
Yeah.
hundreds of millions,
Right.
and yet you're saying sometime in the future
Yeah.
people might benefit. It's not very
Right.
clear, is it?
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, there's nothing about this situation that's very clear. There's absolutely nothing about the situation that's very clear. What we're doing now is, think about it this way, we're not generating income. It's not like we've got a money-making machine in the desert. What we're doing right now is we're laying the scientific groundwork.
Peace talks between the Sahrawi and Morocco recently stumbled again. Morocco sticks to its claim of sovereignty, while the Sahrawis look for a vote for independence and nothing less. With little international pressure to resolve the issue, it's feared that the two sides are heading for a renewed war rather than a peaceful solution.
Una Smith reporting now. We did invite a representative of the Moroccan government to take part in tonight's programme, but they declined. I'm joined now from Aberystwyth in Wales by John Gurr of Western Sahara Resource Watch. John Gurr, as the piece we've just seen makes it very clear, it's a very complicated situation. But what is the possibility of some political settlement in the near future?
First, I'm going to say it's not a complicated situation. It's quite clear that Sahrawis have the right to self-determination. It's a former colony, they're the last colony in Africa, and that is their right. There's no dispute about that. The dispute is that Morocco will not let the referendum take place.
They say, the Moroccans would say that they will let it take place. I guess the question is, who will be allowed to vote? Because obviously they moved some people into that territory in the intervening years.
Well, there have been two things, but first, they won't let any discussion of a referendum take place that includes an option of independence. And under any norms of self-determination, there has to be an option of independence. The Polisario are quite happy for a referendum that includes an option of integration with Morocco, or autonomy, or independence. But independence must be one of those options. And Morocco refuses to even discuss that.
If it's as straightforward, John, as you say it is, why the failure of the West to act then?
Well, there's a lack of international will to put pressure on Morocco to comply with its responsibilities under international law as a member of the United Nations, and is having actually signed an agreement to hold a referendum. The international community is failing the Sahrawi people. It's failing to put pressure onto Morocco.
Well, why, John? The question is, why are they failing to put pressure on Morocco?
You mentioned phosphates. The report mentioned phosphates. It mentions oil. For many countries and for companies, it's business as usual. They want to do business with Morocco to exploit the resources, and that exploitation just continues the situation. It supports Morocco in its occupation of the Western Sahara. The last resolution back in April renewed the mandate to MINURSO. MINURSO was set up nearly in September. It will be 20 years since MINURSO was set up for the explicit purpose of organising the referendum. 20 years on, and they have still not organised that referendum. In the renewal, there were calls for human rights monitoring. The report mentioned the human rights abuses that are ongoing all the time in Western Sahara. That call was blocked by France quite explicitly. France threatened to veto any resolution that included a direct reference to human rights monitoring by an international body.
In terms of the fisheries question, I don't know, obviously you could hear the report but not see it, but you saw, or heard rather, our fisheries minister Simon Coveney say that he wasn't entirely happy with the sort of information that was coming out of the Western Sahara, specifically vis-a-vis the benefit or lack of it for the local people from fishing off Western Sahara waters. What would you say to him about what's actually happening on the ground there?
Well, there's two things. The report always mentions the question of benefit. If you go back to the legal opinion of Hans Corell, the legal advisor to the United Nations in 2002, which the European Commission and governments always refer to when they come to resource exploitation, he was quite clear that it has to be with the wishes and the interests of the people. Nobody has consulted the Sahrawi as to their wishes. The only body that is recognised as speaking on behalf of the Sahrawi, Polisario, have quite clearly stated they do not support any of these agreements. So that's the wishes. In terms of the benefits, the UK government has stated that the evidence provided by the Commission that came from Morocco does not distinguish between benefit to the Moroccan settlers or to the Sahrawi. The UK, as the report said, did not support the extension because they were not happy with that information.
All right, John, we're going to have to.
So I think I would.
All right, we've run out.
I would tell him to go talk to his UK counterpart.
Finish that point very quickly. Talk to whom?
So I would tell him to talk to his UK counterparts.
All right.
As to their interpretation.
John Gurr, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight from Aberystwyth in Wales. Thank you. That's all we've time for tonight. We're back at the usual time next Thursday night. Until then, from all of us here, a very good night.